Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, across this great country. If it's Tuesday, it is Cleveland, Ohio to the forefront. Move the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame out. Move the Jake out. Move the Q out. This is the American Sports History Podcast, hosted by my great friend, Peter Ray. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing, 347-205-9631. You can catch an archive version on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports. Without further ado, let me give them the red carpet. The podium, it's in its place. And here comes the mic. Peter, first of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, we're waiting in the bullpen for Mark Heffernan, your great guest.
That's right. I'm doing very well, Mark, and I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, and I have a website. It's called Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray. And, yes, we have a wonderful guest tonight. We're waiting for him. He's from Bakersfield, California, still lives there. He was involved with the NFHS Network Play on Sports Play-by-Play, Kern High School District Game Day host, NorCal Sports TV Prep, and JC Sportscaster. And he is co-host of Marked Men Madness at StablesMedia.com. And Mark Heffernan, the immortal Mark Heffernan, is our guest tonight. We'll wait for him to come on. Now, since Mark Heffernan is from Southern California, I thought we'd talk about the history of Los Angeles sports. Of course, Los Angeles, on the West Coast, developed later. It's not like a real old American city, and so it didn't have, pro sports and really till the L.A. Dodgers. No, actually, the Cleveland Rams moved first. I believe that was their first major team. Moved to L.A. for the 46th season, right after the Cleveland Rams won the 45 NFL title. Then they moved to Los Angeles. Now, the interesting thing about L.A. in terms of the NFL, they only have two NFL titles. The L.A. Rams in 1951, and then the L.A. Raiders, who moved down from Oakland in '83. And, of course, for years, then for a time, they had the Rams and Raiders, and then the Rams moved back to moved to St. Louis for a time, and then the Raiders went back to Oakland. They didn't have any team, and then now, of course, they have the Chargers moved up from San Diego, which was a bummer, at least for San Diego, and then the Rams have moved back. So now they have two NFL teams, but they've only won 2 NFL titles all these years, and so that's kind of unusual. Now the Dodgers, of course, this year, the LA has 2 titles in recent weeks. The LA Lakers in the NBA, and then the LA Dodgers in baseball. And so that's really amazing. Now, if you want to talk about baseball, history of baseball, and now they did have LA had a Pacific Coast League team, which actually was technically minor league, but the fans out there took it seriously, and the guys made good money, and so a lot of times they wanted to play out there rather than MLB. And, of course, the Brooklyn Dodgers, that was the big thing because baseball, back in the 50s was definitely king. So very tragic for Brooklyn, New York. They finally won the World Series in 1955, and then after the 57 season, they moved to Los Angeles. Interestingly, the Dodgers, so I thought I was interested in talking about what Mark Heffernan would remember based on his life. I believe he was born in the mid-50s. Anyway, they moved to L.A., and they win the title in 59, right? So that's, again, hard for Brooklyn fans. And then actually in the 60s, they had some really good teams, one in 63, one again in 65, very dominant, powerful teams, guys like Sandy Koufax, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Don Drysdale, and then the Davis brothers, Tommy Davis, and the other guy, can't think of it at the moment, Willie Davis. Anyway, they had a real strong team. Now, then the shocking 66 World Series when Baltimore comes out of nowhere. Baltimore, which had been dominant in the 1890s, and they had no team for a long time. and then they moved the St. Louis Browns, became the, I believe, if that's correct, became the Baltimore Orioles. And yeah, this is where Frank Robinson made his mark. You know, he was a new guy on the team, but you know, obviously they had other guys. And this was a shocker because you know, everyone figured the Dodgers would win, and they were swept, which is always very, very tough, getting swept in a 4-game series. And this is why really Cleveland ended up hiring Frank Robinson as manager in '75, not also to make history as the first black manager, but everyone could see the impact Frank Robinson had. Of course, they had guys like Brooks Robinson, Boog Powell, and so forth. Yeah, and then really the Orioles were dominant into the 70s, into the early 80s, and haven't been so great since then. And then, well, the Dodgers were kind of, I don't know, I guess that hit them pretty hard, but then into the 70s, they were a strong team, and they were a contender. And then, yeah, they lost the 74 World Series, and then they had these familiar players since the 70s is my era, right? These guys like, you know, a famous infield, Steve Garvey at first, and this guy, Davey Lopes, like set a stolen base streak record, and Bill Russell at short, and Ron Say at third, and then these and really the pitching staff was just tremendous. You know, with Don Sutton and Andy Messersmith, Tommy John and Claude Osteen. In fact, Messersmith was the guy who really, of course, Catfish Hunter. Oh, by the way, next week, dear listeners, we got Brian Snow as our guest, Snowman in the Morning. Who's a national talent. He will be on the program next week. The following week, there's no show because of the Thanksgiving holiday week. So anyway, the Dodgers, the players didn't, all the years they didn't have free agency. They could, if they had to take whatever the owners gave them, you know, and then sort of by chance, a mistake on Charlie Finley's hand, Catfish Hunter became a free agent and signed this big contract with the Yankees. Actually, my favorite player of all time, really. I always think about Catfish Hunter. But anyway, Andy Messersmith decided to test the reserve clause, and he was successful, along with Dave McNally, although McNally retired. And Messersmith signed a big contract with Atlanta in, I believe, '76 season, and then. But anyway, the point here we're getting off. It's so easy to get off the point when you're in history. But Messersmith, he signed a big deal with Atlanta. Didn't do very well, and then of course '77 really was the beginning of the floodgates. But they had Tommy John, who actually started with Cleveland, and then he had a long career. He's not in the Hall of Fame, kind of surprising because he's way up there in terms of wins, like 280 plus, I believe, something like that. And Tommy Lasorda, one of the most inspiring, I think, managers in baseball. And then if you go up to a few years later, and what's tough is the Dodgers lost 2 World Series in a row, and especially the one, I guess, that was sort of kind of traumatic, you could say, was when Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in Game 6 in Yankee Stadium, which was the clincher. But anyway, those were both Tommy Lasorda's team. Tommy Lasorda had so much charisma; was a tremendous guy. And eventually, they did win in '81, the strike year. I believe that was Fernando Valenzuela. They got this Mexican pitcher who was just a tremendous player. And then in '88, which was actually their last title until this year, and of course Oral Hershiser, who was just amazing, '88. And we got him in Cleveland. That was a lot of fun having Oral Hershiser. Now, moving along to basketball, interesting thing is the Minneapolis Lakers moved to L.A. back in I'm not sure the exact year, but by late 50s, I believe, or into the early 60s. But the Lakers, one of the interesting things, in fact, the Minneapolis Lakers was an early dynasty in basketball, and anyway, they got to, and this was once the Lakers moved to L.A., then the beginning of the greatest rivalry in sports, or in the NBA started, the Lakers-Celtics finals, and they had tons of them. And if you go back to, the first one, I believe, was in '62, Celtics win. And the next year, same thing, Celtics again. And then 2 years later, the next 65-66, Celtics win So they're getting to the finals, but they can't win. Oh, looks like we have a caller. I'm going to try to find out. I got a message here. Let's see. We have David Andrews out of San Diego. David, you're on the program.
How you doing? Hey, I heard you brought up Andy Messersmith's name. Great pitcher. Pitched for a few teams, Dodgers, I believe Angels, and Braves. And I'll tell you a story. He's very close to Hall of Fame. One of Willie Stargell's home runs out of Dodger Stadium, he hit off of Andy Messersmith in '73. Clear out of the stadium. I don't know if you knew that or not at Dodger Stadium.
Who hit it?
Willie Stargell hit one out.
Stargell, okay.
Did it twice. He hit one in '69 out of the stadium over that roof in right field off of Alan Foster too.
So, David, are you from San Diego? Did you grow up in San Diego?
Partially. I'm from Sagertown, Pennsylvania, just south of Erie. And then my mom's from Latrobe. My mom went to high school with Arnold Palmer and Mr. Rogers. And I'm a Pittsburgh Pirate and a Cleveland Indian fan.
Oh, are you? What year were you born?
1958, January 23rd, 1958.
Okay, 58. So I was born in '60. So you'd be in this, and you are a Cleveland Indians fan.
Yeah, when they had, I remember their pitching staff in '68. They had Sam McDowell, Louis Tiant, Steve Hargan, and Sonny Siebert. So
you probably remember guys. Go ahead.
Rocky Colavito and Leon Wagner, Big Daddy Wags. I know you remember Big Daddy Wags.
Well, it's funny. I was born in '60, but I was a late bloomer in terms of becoming an obsessed sports fan because it was really the '73 tribe onward. So guys like Gaylord Perry and Milt Wilcox, Dick Tedrow, Dick Bosman, and George Hendrick, Charlie Spikes, Buddy Bell, all those guys.
Yeah, Buddy Bell. Chris Chambliss, 1971 Rookie of the Year. It was all the games.
And then we get to see him put the Yanks in the World Series in '76 with a home run off of Mark Littell to end the ALCS.
Yeah. And they had, you know what? Cleveland fans, they go out just like Pittsburgh fans. They root very hard for their teams. And there's something special. And then the guy that called games for the Pirates, my favorite announcer, Bob Prince, the gunner. He was a great announcer. I'm sure you heard of him.
Oh, sure. Now, you also are a Pirates fan.
That was my team, the Pirates. And then the Indians were my second favorite.
So the '79 Pirates mean a lot to you.
Yeah, the '71 even means more.
71, okay.
Yeah, because I love
Roberto Clemente. Yeah, whenever I meet a Puerto Rican, I always say "Viva Clemente," and they love to hear that.
Oh, they love it. And then here's another good sports television guy for baseball and football, Harry Kalas, Harry the K out of Philadelphia. Remember Harry the K?
No, an announcer?
Yes.
No, I don't remember him. Are you a Steelers fan?
Yes, I am. My dad got 1975 Iron City beer cans with the 16-ounce talls with the '75 Super Bowl champs on them.
Oh my God, the '70s Steelers. Whenever I see Terry Bradshaw is probably my favorite. Well, Joe Namath, Terry Bradshaw. And the Steelers and oh my God, those guys, Franco Harris and the immaculate reception and all those guys, Rocky Blyer and Jack Lambert, Mean Joe Green, Lynn Swan, John Stallworth. Oh my God, what a ball team! 4 titles in 6 years.
Yes, they were very tough, and Mel Blount too, and they were a brutal team to play against, man. They were coming after you.
Yeah, and Bradshaw, I mean, he was a big, strong guy, and he was just, and I love seeing him around. He's around in the NFL, and because I have fond memories of it's the '70s. It's when I was a kid, and and the Steelers, they were the elite team, and they really, it's an amazing. And I really think it's because of the family, the Rooney family. My impression is just good people and generation. So it's amazing how they've really been strong since the '70s up till now.
They're great family, straight shooters. Then we can talk about that '79 Pittsburgh Fire team because I know that's Mark Mancini's favorite team. Willie Stargell, my second favorite. Baseball player. He crushed the ball. And he carried them through the playoffs. He was MVP in the playoffs. He was co-MVP with Keith Hernandez that year and MVP of the World Series. They don't win that World Series without Willie Stargell.
And they had those cool flat top caps with the.
They're great.
with those gold lines going around and stars that. Stargell would pass out to guys who did well.
Yeah, the stars. Yeah. And guys like Tekulve, because he saved a lot of games, he was loaded with them on his hat.
Oh man, the Pirates, all those guys. I mean, Richie Zisk, Richie Hebner, Omar Moreno in center, Rennie Stennett. Manny Sanguillen, we picked up in a trade who decided to retire. Bummer. Richie Hebner, all these guys. Dave Parker. Wow, all these fellows.
Al Oliver.
Oh, there's just an endless number of guys. Jerry Royce, Jim Rooker, Bruce Keeson. Yeah, like you said, Kent Tekulve, and wow.
Oh, and then when I was the guy who had 39 before Dave Parker, Bob Beal. He used to throw gas. He was like 6'6". He was probably about 215. He's still living. He's like about 85. But he threw gas. He was on that 71 team. He and then Dave Justy, like you said, he saved a lot of ball games for him. And and my favorite manager was Danny Murtaugh. Now
right.
They won the 60 and the 71 with him. And Chuck Tanner's a great manager too. Great players manager.
And of course, before you were conscious, Mazeroski in 60.
Yeah, I was just a 2-year-old, but I love watching the tapes of that. Oh, that's amazing! They beat the Yankees, loaded team, and they beat them, and the Yankees outscored them in runs. I'm so glad the Pirates that did a lot for the city. I'm glad that the Pirates won that World Series.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the greatest, it's the only Game 7 walk-off in history. Joe Carter, I think it was Game 6. Only 2 World Series walk-offs, and that was in Game 7. And so, I mean, what could be cooler than that, Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I'm so glad you let me on to talk with you. I love sports. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Bill Warrendale, but when he was in San Diego, I used to hang around him a lot. He had his own radio show, and then John Quintera has his radio show. A couple guys I know. Something I would have loved to have done, but you know what? I just love being a fan.
Yeah, it's if you're a fan of a team, like in my case, Cleveland. Well, you follow other teams as well, and especially in my I always think about the 60s, 70s into the early 80s teams, and all kinds of. I think about the Pittsburgh Pirates all the time, the 70s Pirates. Dave Cash, Richie. Yeah, all these guys, I mean, it's part of my, when I was at that time, it was my whole life, so, and they were, Pirates were a very strong team, and so they they were in my mind, and it stays in your, somehow after that, since like 1990, sports didn't have the impact. I don't remember stuff that much, but from then, since I was a kid, so yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh teams were just tremendous. Steelers, Pirates, amazing.
Mike, let me share something with you.
Peter.
My mom's dad, my grandfather, Cribbs, lived in Shaker Heights, Cleveland, suburb of Cleveland. So we lived in Sagertown, so we would drive to see him on the weekends, and my mom was raising my brother and I by herself. So he said when we were going through the Huff area, and I know you know what the Huff area is.
Yeah.
He said at the stop sign, he said, if there's nobody coming, don't stop. So just keep going, you know. But those tough neighborhood,
right?
Oh, geez. They have I think Don King, Arsenio Hall is from there. Gary Jeter, he played for the Rams. Football player. Mike Easler, didn't he? He's from Cleveland. I don't know if he's from the Huff. But and another thing, I got to see Sam McDowell pitch as a kid. My God, he threw gas. Now he had trouble with alcohol, but he's cleaned himself up though now. But he was a tough player, and then they traded him for Gaylord Perry, and then Gaylord Perry won that Cy Young for Cleveland, I think in 72.
72. Yeah, that was a good trade.
Yeah. Yeah. And then out here, where I actually live in Oceanside, so I've met Chris Chambliss's brothers, and he went to Oceanside High. That's where I finished school when we moved from Pennsylvania out here, because my stepdad was in the Marine Corps and finished raising us, and I don't miss that cold weather anymore.
Were you in San Diego in '84?
Yes, when the Padres. Yes, yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah, you guys had Chris Chambliss, Steve Garvey. You picked up some free agents. Who else did you guys have? These famous players. I know Garvey was Nettles and Kurt Bavacqua.
Yeah, Bavacqua, Nettles. We never had Chambliss in San Diego. Chambliss played for.
Greg Nettles.
Nettles, yeah, Greg Nettles. He was in India. Yeah, and then a guy who was a policeman and a detective for the Oceanside Police Department. He retired. Jack Brohammer. I know you remember him playing for the Indians.
Oh my God! So he's in San Diego.
Yeah. He's originally from Huntington Beach. That's where George Brett's from too. It's north of us, but up there around Anaheim, where the Angels play.
I think about Jack Brohammer all the time. Guys like him. These names go through my mind all because Brohammer in 72, 73 around that time playing second. You know these players from the 70s. They're just in my mind, and I can't. And I enjoy thinking about them. You know, I have some of the baseball cards. You know, it's part of your life. You know, and that's why it's fun if I'd ever got to meet a guy like that. It would be a lot of fun.
He's a down-to-earth guy. And,
so you met Jack Brohammer?
Yes, I have.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, he's just like you and me, you know. And another thing, Cleveland. Now you weren't probably following him, but when I was a little kid, Rocky Colavito could do it all. I mean, he was like a Clemente Mays type. Not quite. He had a heck of a cannon for an arm. In one game, he hit 4 homers in a game, too. Home runs.
Oh, out here, he's beloved forever. You know, you never hear people. You know, I mean, it's part of life. It's part of Cleveland. You know, loving Rocky Colavito. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll eventually die out, but it's tremendous. And they just hang people. You know, and the trade was just. It was just like disaster for the city.
Keene. Yeah.
Harvey Keene. You know, it's funny when the '82. Brewers got to the World Series. Harvey Keene was the manager, although at the time I wasn't really aware, you know, that he was the guy we traded. We had this crazy GM traded Colavito out of his mind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, let me ask you this. Now, you're old enough. Dorothy Full-Time on the news out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Then they had that show where those two guys would blow up those things on those monster movies, Big Chuck, and I forget what that was. Big Chuck.
Well, they had Goulardi.
Goulardi, that's it. Yeah, Goulardi. Yeah. And
Cleveland in the '60s. Yeah, and then down Christmas shopping at Higbee's downtown at the Terminal Tower. You know, and all that. Seeing Santa Claus.
Captain Penny. Mr.
Captain
Jingle,
Penny. There.
Win all
Mr.
those toys
Jingling.
at Howley's. Yeah, win all those toys at Howley's. Remember? On the Captain Penny show. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool them all, right?
Right, that's right. I go down in Cleveland. They got this First Energy Stadium. This it's a football stadium. It's where the Cleveland Municipal Stadium was. So I go down there. And I that's again in my mind the Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and I just it was a very beloved building for me. Going to games back in the 70s with my father.
Oh, there's nothing like it. Going to a game with your dad. It doesn't matter where the seats are. If you're with your dad, you're watching the game. Yeah. And
we'd go in Gate A and get a hot dog, and not many people were there. Small crowd, real simple, and the tickets were cheap, but it was just, it was magic,
Right. And it was affordable. Now, with the salary so sky high and everything, I don't know how families can afford to go to games. They definitely can't afford to go to NFL games or NBA games. And baseball, if they price that out, it's just going to be tough. I mean, what's your take on that, Mike?
Peter,
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. It's basically professional sports is for rich people now. What they've done is they've made these stadiums and arenas. They've made them like luxurious, really, really nice. Cleveland Municipal Stadium was not a really beautiful. It wasn't a luxurious place. So It was for the common man. So anybody could go. Now you can't go. I can't go. I can't afford going to games. So it's become a place where. And the sad thing is, you got people going to games that really aren't into it. I know people. My parents had rich friends, so we ended up going down. They don't really care about sport. It's just something to do. They're not into it. They don't love it. It's a status symbol going. And the one guy I met, he's like, I don't know anything about the history of he brags about he doesn't know anything about the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? And they got courtside seats. And I think, you're proud of that? Well, you got a ton of money. You can afford like these $500 seats, and I shouldn't complain because they were gracious enough to invite us. But they don't. They really don't care. So sports now, you got the people who are at the games. They don't really care about it.
Well, when they started, they got Bobby Bingo Smith. He could shoot. He had a beautiful jump shot. I think University of Tulsa. And he was about 6'6", maybe about 200. Real fair-skinned black guy. They had Jim Jones. Jim Jones was the man. And starting out, I think it was about 71 was their first, 71 was their first season. They played downtown. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the old Cleveland Arena. Well, it was over on East, 30th or 40th, and eventually they were there a couple of years before they built the Coliseum. The Miracle at Richfield, 1976, one of my favorite memories. All those guys Footsie Walker, Austin Carr. Yeah, it's what's nice having Austin Carr does games on TV now, so he's it was such a thing. Most of those games were just on the radio. I would listen in bed. They weren't on TV, but yeah, they got to the East Finals. Very exciting. Yeah, Jim Jones, Nate Thurmond, right? Luke Woody, Jimmy Clemens.
Oh yeah. Oh, Nate Thurmond. He had to go up against Wilt Chamberlain. He had to go up against Bill Russell. He could handle them. I mean, Wilt was tough to play against, and Lou. Well, they became Kareem. Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and what an exciting thing for the city of Cleveland to have some of those players. Foots Walker wasn't very big, but I mean he was fast up and down the court, and Jim Jones, Clemens, Bobby Bingo Smith, he had a beautiful shot.
Our guest tonight has been David, out of the bullpen, David Andrews out of San Diego. We're out of time. David, do you have any final words for our audience?
No, I just hope that this COVID ends so people can go to these games and support their teams. You know, these arenas, whether it's hockey, basketball, football, baseball, and I hope that that will just hurt everything to me. Baseball is my favorite. And thank you, Peter, for having me as a guest on your show.
Oh, well, thanks for calling. Mark Heffernan apparently couldn't make it, so thank you so much for David for calling. And it's awful nice talking with you since and whenever I meet a guy my age who grew up supporting Cleveland, I know we can have a long talk because we have the same memories of the same players. So it's awful nice having you on the show.
Thank you, and I do want to tell you one thing. My grandpa had a beer. You ever hear of the Wagon Wheel in Shaker Heights?
No.
Oh, it's a bar out there. But anyway, he saw Herb score there years ago. He got to have a drink with him.
Oh, that's cool. That's wonderful. God bless Herb Score. Thanks again. We got to go, David. Thanks so much for calling. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I love it.
David Andrews. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, David. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Thanks.